Hello, everybody. My name is Gio Marin. I am a minister here in the Houston area, but I'm also a financial master coach, and I'm also a registered investment advisor. I've been asked to just share a little bit of my knowledge on finances, and so I want to guide you today to 7 steps of financial freedom. But before I do that, let me share with you a little bit of my testimony of why I'm so passionate about this. When I first got married, I was debt-free. One day I'll share my own personal testimony, but I was debt-free. And I got married to my wife, and she had $159,000 in debt, medical school loans, as you see on the screen. But by the grace of God, we decided that we were always going to live on one income, and that has been my income. So whether she's worked full-time or whether she's worked part-time or when she has not worked at all at the birth of our first daughter, and we've always lived on one income, and we've banked hers. And you see here a little web presence, or I cut it out from the Sallie Mae website, that in 15 months we paid off $159,000. As you see that, we knocked Sallie Mae out of the house. And a lot of people tell me, you know, it's easy for you to get rid of all that debt because you have a wife who is a physician. But I answer that here in a little bit, because it's not how much you make, but what you do with it. So many people ask me, how did you get out of this kind of debt? Well, we got rid of credit cards. For 12 years, we did not own a single credit card, because credit card debt, if you Google it, it is out of control. We drove 2 rattle traps, a Nissan 1998 Nissan Maxima and an Oldsmobile. The car was 14 years old. My wife's car was 15 years old. And I'll tell you a funny story about her car. She was coming out of the hospital shift, night shift, and the security guard stopped her and said, "Ma'am, we've had complaints of a car that doesn't belong in the doctor's lounge and doctor's parking lot, parking here, and it looks like yours. May I ask why you're parking in the doctor's parking lot?" And she was tired after a night shift, so she just showed him her badge. And the security guard was so apologetic. He was like, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were a doctor. May I ask why you're driving this old car?" She was like, "My husband and I have a plan to get out of debt, and until then, we're going to keep driving this." And he was so proud of her, because he told her that he knew the other doctors, and they were broke. They were just working hard to keep up the lifestyle they wanted to. And then in the other picture you see there, I was driving home from giving a financial seminar, and my wheel came off. And I posted this picture on Facebook, and I want you to capture this, because I knew this was going to happen. When I posted that picture on Facebook, everybody was saying, "Gio, you're crazy. You know, get a new car. You're going to kill your bride. You know, you're driving that old rattle trap." Everybody wanted me, while in debt, to get a brand new car. But think about it. Why did the wheel come off? It was because I brought brand new tires for the car, and somebody forgot to tighten the wheel, and it came off at high speed. Luckily, none of us got hurt. But it shows that people always look to get into debt instead of finding the real reason or the real cause for things. So there's nothing wrong with the car. It just somebody forgot to tighten the lug nut. My wife and I were debt-free for 6 years before we rushed into a house. You remember in 2008, the economy crashed? Do you remember why it was? It was broke people buying houses they couldn't afford, and banks not doing their job and loaning people money they couldn't pay back for houses they couldn't afford. So there's no rush. There's nothing wrong with renting until you can buy a house properly. So we didn't rush into a house. And so after 15 months, we were debt-free. And now here, 102 months married, we have a 6 months emergency fund. We have a growing retirement fund, and we have 2 little precious girls that are my world, that I want to leave a legacy for, an inheritance for. And so that's our story now. That's what we did. We had a game plan that I want to share with you about how we did it. This is what we drive now, brand new cars. We bought them in cash. I normally don't recommend buying brand new cars, but the market was right after the 2008 crash. And so we have a brand new 2012 at the time Subaru Outback and a nice Kia Optima Turbo, 272 horsepower. This was our first house down in the valley when we lived in Harlingen. Paid a massive down payment of $100,000, and our mortgage was only $150,000. Then we moved to Houston, and this is where we currently live at the moment. All because we did it the right way. We followed a plan that I'm going to share with you. So how did we do it? Well, I'm a man of faith. I'm a minister. And this book here, titled The Total Money Makeover, was the book that changed my life. It was the winter of Christmas break of 2007. I was in the seminary getting my Master's of Divinity degree when I found this book at a friend's house. And I pulled it. I was bored. It was a cold day in Tennessee. And I decided to read it. I was so captivated by this book from beginning to end that I finished it in one shot. And I did exactly as it told me. At the time I had credit cards, I cut them off. I started managing my money the way he says. And then I started teaching his class. As soon as I got back on campus in January, I was 1 week ahead of his class while I was teaching the class, the people I was helping with. The other book is a book from my denomination called Counsels in Stewardship, and above all else, the Bible. If you read the book of Proverbs, one chapter a day, you will have a whole month, and if you pay attention to the financial principles, that alone will get you ahead. But this is how we practically did it. We followed this 7-step plan to financial freedom. So step one, it's called baby step one. You save $1,000 for an emergency fund, a baby emergency fund, as fast as you can. If you have to sell stuff, do it. Get that $1,000 as quick as you can. My wife and I, for that year we were getting out of debt, that's all we had in our emergency fund. And God blessed, because we never had an emergency over $1,000. And so baby step number one, sell as much as you can to save $1,000 as quickly as you can. Then baby steps 2 is pay off the debt using the Debt Snowball, which I will teach you. Then baby step 3 is save 3 to 6 months emergency fund. Now that we've been debt free for 12 years, we have about an 8-month emergency fund, because we're about to make a big purchase here coming up soon. So we really have 3 to 6 months. We have 6 months of emergency. So think about it. If I should lose my job, if my wife should lose her job, we have 6 months of our bills paid for in advance. Meaning, if we needed to pay the bills for 6 months without any income coming in, we have that covered. Baby step number 4 is invest 15% of your income towards retirement, not 10%, not 20%, but 15%. If you have kids, college funding. Baby step number 5. Baby step number 6, pay off the house early. And baby step 7, build wealth and give. Leave a legacy. And I will show you that you can leave $1 million legacy to your children or to a charity, depending what your priorities are. But before we get into the details of the baby step, I want to share something with you. You know, what happens if you're a family of 4, like I am, and let's say you're heavily in debt, and you get fired, or you die in an accident? With no money in the bank, with heavy in debt, who's going to take care of your kids? Let's say the husband dies, and he was the sole breadwinner. How are you going to cover that emergency if you're still heavily in debt? And that's why before the baby steps, there are 2 things that are a non-negotiable you must have. And one of them is term life insurance. And what is life insurance? Life insurance is to protect the family income, the breadwinner's income, in case they die. Think about it. When I was heavily in debt, I had close to $1 million policy. So did my wife. And now that we have children, right? So imagine this. If I die, my wife receives about $1 million. She doesn't have to rush to work. She doesn't have to rush into a job that she may not want. Why? Because who's gonna take care of the children, right? She wants to raise our children. So if she didn't have that income to protect her in case I died, then she would have to go back to work. She'd have to pay people to babysit, and then somebody else is raising your children. Life insurance, specifically term life insurance, and we'll get into an example here, is what you need. Because look, let me ask you this question. If you die, how is your spouse going to survive if they are the only breadwinner, if you're the only breadwinner? And so that's why with $1 million, she will have more than enough money so she can raise the kids. And when the kids are old enough to take care of themselves, 15, 16, 17, then she can go back to work without skipping a beat. Since we're debt-free, she doesn't have to worry about income. The house will be paid off. And so life insurance is important. Then the second aspect, before even launching into the baby steps, is that you need a will. If both of you should die and you leave kids behind, who is going to take care of your kids? A will lets you designate who will be the guardian of your kids. Because otherwise, let's say we both die and my two girls are left without a will. Then, let's say my sister and then my mother-in-law begin to fight over custody of the children. Well, the courts will then place them in foster care until the court decides. But because we have a will, we already have planned in advance where my children will go and how the life insurance money will be handled. And so have a will. Term life insurance and a will are basic needs of a financial plan. So let's talk about life insurance real quick. There are basically two types of life insurance, the good kind and the bad kind. Basically, they're called term insurance, which is just insurance for to cover death. And then there are other types of insurance. The most well-known is called whole life insurance that has a savings component to it. But those life insurance with a saving component in it are a big ripoff. Did you hear me? They're a big ripoff. I'll show you why. On the screen, you're going to see an example of a 40-year-old male, average health, who gets a whole life policy. This is an actual quote because as a financial advisor, a registered investment advisor, I have access to these quotes. And so look at this quote. This 40-year-old is paying about $793 a month for $675,000 coverage. But this is how they sell it to you. Oh, you need to plan for retirement. You need to save for the future. So let's bundle that together and save money, and you have your life covered should you die. But here's the problem. It's so expensive. And not only that, let's say you saved up to $200,000 in this policy, and your death benefit is $675,000, and you die tomorrow. How much money will you get? Well, the normal person thinks, well, $200,000 plus $675,000, I should get $875,000. Nope. You only get $675,000. What happens to the other 200? They keep it. Yep, you heard me right. They keep it. And for the amount of money you're paying, that is no way they should be able to keep your money. It's your savings, but that's how these life insurance policies work. They have a savings component. So what do I recommend? Earlier I said term life insurance. So this is how you do it. Imagine you can afford $793 a month. But then you go and get term life insurance. The same $675,000, you can buy term for $86 a month. So what's the difference? The difference is this much. $707 a month. If you put that monthly into a mutual fund, earning 12%, and I'll show you how that's done, you'd have, at the end of your 20-year policy, you would have $684,000. So you have self-insured yourself. Now, why only 20 years? Well, think about it. My girls are 4 and 1 years old. In 20 years, they're going to be 24 and 21. I don't need life insurance at that moment. My wife, I have millions in the bank. The girls are adults. And my wife, if she needed more income, she can go back to work. Let me ask you this question. Would you keep your car insurance if you didn't have a car? No. Would you keep your house insurance if you didn't have a house? So why keep life insurance forever at those astronomical prices if you are now self-insured? And so that's the difference. Now, here's the beauty of term life insurance and investing the money separately. If you pay the $86 for your term insurance to the insurance company, you invest the $707 to the mutual fund company, and let's say you die in a month before your policy expires. Not only do you get $684,000 from the mutual fund, you also get the $675,000 from the life insurance. You get them both. And your kids and your wife would have over $1.2 million to survive should you die. The worst thing you want should a tragedy happen, and we all know people who died young, is for your spouse or your loved ones to have a financial crisis when they're having an emotional crisis. We don't want that. You need to love your family enough to have insurance in place if you're married, or if you're married with children, or you're divorced with children. If you're single and nobody depends on you financially, you don't need life insurance. But if you are married or divorced with children, or you have a parent who's dependent on you, then you need life insurance. And the only life insurance I recommend is term life insurance. So let's talk about budgeting. Now we're in baby step one. You're getting your $1,000 emergency fund, and now you need to create a budget. So what is a budget? Let me illustrate it in several ways. A budget is having a game plan. Imagine a football team, your favorite football team, without a game plan. Imagine you trying to take a road trip from New York to California, and you want to stop at tourist sites. Can you do it without a GPS and a map? Yeah, sure. But would it be the most efficient? See, to take that road trip and to take one and maximize it successfully, you need a GPS and a road map. You need a game plan. Well, it's the same thing with a budget. See, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And the only budget I recommend is a zero-based budget. So what is a zero-based budget? A zero-based budget is spending all of your income on paper every month. My wife and I, we have our budget committee meeting on the first Sunday of the month. And why every month? Well, every month is different. I don't pay my car insurance by month. I pay it every 6 months. I don't, Christmas has different bills because of gifts. November has different bills because we usually travel to Florida to see my mother for Thanksgiving. So a zero-based budget is telling your money where to go. You spend every dollar on paper. And that way you can keep track of where your money is going. Look, a budget is not restrictive. It's just you being man or woman enough to keep accounts of where you're spending your money. There's a story financial coaches like to tell of a man who was wondering why he didn't have enough money to retire. After 3 months of budgeting, he realized he was spending $1,200 eating out. He was eating basically his retirement. When you do a budget and you begin to see where your money goes, the average person can save anywhere between $300 to $800 of where they're wasting money. Imagine what you could do. Can you get out of debt faster if you had an extra $300 to $800? Of course you can. That's why a budget is priority. But let me give you, though, the number one key to a successful budget. A lot of times people think is savings or paying off your debt. No. The number one thing to a successful budget is to have money to blow some steam off. We call it allowance money. Because if you make your budget too restrictive, at the end, after a couple of months, you're going to give up on it. You're not going to do it. And you're just going to go back to your old habits. My wife and I, when we were climbing out of the $159,000 in debt, we gave each other $100 a month each that we could spend, no questions asked. She can do some shopping, and I could go play golf and not feel like the budget was strangling me. And so a zero-based budget, you can learn more about it on my website, giomarin.com, GIOMARIN.com, and you can learn more about budgeting there. Now let's talk about baby step number 2. It's called paying off your debt, the debt snowball. Most people are heavily in debt, but you can get out of debt. Most people can get out of debt anywhere between 6 to 3 years, depending how heavily it is. But look at the example. Let's say you have a debt there, and you're paying $200 to that first debt. I list them smallest to largest, regardless of interest rate. You have $200, and you owe $400. In 2 months, you're done. You don't take that $200 and celebrate. You take that $200 and you put it to your next debt. So now you're paying $250. And then that eliminates the debt faster. Then you take that $250 and add it to the other money you're paying, and now you have $400 you're paying off. And finally, you add it to the last step, and then you become debt-free. Ask yourself, think of all the money you've made the last 5 years. Where has it gone? Add it all up and ask yourself, where has it gone? Have you gotten further in debt? And so if you have a game plan, you can get out of debt. And you know what you can do when you no longer have any debt? You can do whatever you want. My wife and I this year are taking close to 6 vacations. Short ones, 5 days here, 4 days there. But nevertheless, we're actually going to Canada for about 15 days. Canada in Portland. Why? Because we've worked hard to get out of debt, and now we live debt-free. So the debt snowball, once again, you can go to my website and learn about the debt snowball. Remember earlier, I asked the question, or I mentioned that a lot of people tell me it's easy for you to get out of debt when your wife is a physician or a doctor, right? But look at Evander Holyfield. Many people of you know him. He made over $200 million, and at one point he had to file bankruptcy. Why didn't all that money benefit him? Look at Latrell Sprewell. I know these examples are old, but he made $50 million, and he too filed for bankruptcy. And then the most famous boxer of them all, Iron Mike Tyson, at one point had made over $300 million, and he was only worth $700. See, it's not about the income. It's about having a game plan. It's about telling your money what to do. Have it work for you. Do not let money be your master. Let it be your slave. These 3 individuals who made money, more money than I have ever made, and yet they were broke. They went broke. Now, because they're famous, they've been able to make their fortunes back, or at least a good portion of it. But you and I can't afford to do that. We have one lifetime to get it right. And the quicker we get out of debt and save for the future, the better off we will be. Let me give you this example. If I gave you $1 billion today, would you be well off? Yes or no? Well, the answer depends. Because if I give you $1 billion, but you're $3 billion in debt, are you well off? What happens if I tell you I'll give you $1 million? Are you well off? Once again, it depends. Because if I give you $1 million and you have no debt, who's better off? The guy with $1 billion but $3 billion in debt, or the guy with $1 million and no debt? See, it's not about how much you make, but about what you do with what you make. A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. If you listen to the Dave Ramsey podcast, it's free, 3 hours every day. You will listen to stories like this one. A man who worked all his life never making more than 60 grand a year. He put away 10% of his income all his life. He worked picking cotton. He worked menial jobs. Like I said, he never made more than 60 grand in a year. By the time he retired, he had well over $1 million. He was debt-free. The house was paid for and everything. That's the dream I try to teach people. That's the goal. You want to be able to leave a legacy, and that's why you need a budget. A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Listen to these Bible verses. It says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. I don't want to be a servant to anybody. I don't want to be a slave to a lender. I don't want to owe anybody anything. Why? Because the Bible tells us, owe no man anything except to love one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. It's good not to have debt. It's good to be able to help people. And so you have to make it a priority. No one's going to get you out of debt unless you do it yourself. Now, let me talk about Fico Score. Anybody, do you know what a Fico Score is? A Fico Score is your credit score, right? But look at this. Remember the $1 billion example I said? Imagine if I give you $1 billion. Do you know what happens to your Fico Score? Nothing. It doesn't move an inch. Here's why. Because your Fico Score is based on one thing and one thing only: how you manage debt. My hero, financial hero, Dave Ramsey, just built a building for $50 million in cash. Think about it. $50 million in cash. Do you know what his Fico Score is? 0. Here's a man who can build a building for $50 million, but has no credit score. Why? Because he hasn't borrowed money in over 30 years, right? So it's based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components of how you manage debt. And that's why people who brag about a great Fico Score, all they're telling you is they have debt. They have debt, and I don't want to play that game. My goal is to have 0. I'm debt-free, but I do debt-free except for the house. The house will be paid off in about 5 years. And so I still have a Fico Score because I have a mortgage. But after that, my goal is to be completely 0 on my Fico Score. So let's talk a little bit about investments. We're going through this fast. Maybe some other time we could do an episode just strictly on investments. But look at this. Here are 2 individuals, Ben and Arthur. One of them saves from the age of 19, $2,000 up to the age of 26. And then he says, you know what? I don't want to save a single dime anymore. I'm done. Then his brother says, you know what? I've been partying all this time. Time to grow up, time to save. And he saves $2,000 all the way up to age 65. If you know the rule of compound interest, let me ask you the question. Who do you think has more money at the end? I'll let you sit on that for a second. Look at this. At the end, the one who invested just from 19 to 26 had more money at the end. Why? Because the sooner you start, the better off you'll be. And that's why it's so important that you get out of debt quickly. Because debt is robbing you of the financial freedom you want. Debt is robbing you of the legacy you want to leave behind. And if you go to my website, giomarin.com, you will learn more about this and how investing is the only way you're going to retire here in America. Here is that graph in one shot. I want to retire with millions in the bank, and I'm on pace to retire with about $5 million. Because look, the fact is your in-laws are not a retirement plan. We can't depend on mom and dad for the rest of our lives, or our in-laws, right? We have to leave a legacy ourselves, and it only starts by you deciding to look in the mirror and saying, that's it. I'm going to take charge of my money. I'm going to make a budget, and I'm going to do it God's way. I'm going to follow the 7-step plan to financial freedom. Let me show you these mutual funds. These are actual mutual funds I have. Now, these graphs are old. I wish I would have had newer ones, because last year my mutual funds did over 30%. If you just look at the S&P 500 index, which is the index that tracks the 500 biggest companies in the United States, it did over 30% interest rate. I calculate my retirement based on only 12% interest rate. But here, and there is nowhere else you're going to get 12% interest rate. Look at these stocks, these mutual funds, than in the stock market. Some of them have averaged over 12% from their history. And so if you go to my website, you will learn how to choose these mutual funds. And if you schedule a free consultation, we can talk about this more on my website on the upper right-hand corner, giomarin.com. You will see schedule a call, and you can book it around the schedule that fits for you on what's available. But look, let me talk to you about the rule of 72. You take the interest rate you get, and I normally use 12%, divided by 72. 72 divided by 12, and you get 6. That means that my money is doubling every 6 years. So if I had 30% interest rate, that means my money would double a little bit over 2 years. Every 2 years, my money is doubling. And this is the only way you're going to retire. But you know what? A lot of people say, the stock market is tricky, it's risky, I don't want to put my money in there. Well, let me recommend 2 books. Well, one is called The Total Money Makeover, which we spoke about, and the other one is called Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth. And it tells you the history of the stock market. But let me ask you this question. Have you looked at your bank statement? What's the interest rate on your bank account? Maybe 0.3%, if you're lucky, 2% if you're on an online bank, right? That's not going to get you retired. When you consider then inflation, right? What costs today $1 next year will cost $1.04, right? Inflation has historically ran at 4%. That means that if you're only earning 1% in your bank, you're actually losing money. Your purchasing power of your money is actually degrading. And so you need to earn more than 4%. So there's risk in not being in the market. And so, between taxes and inflation, if you're not earning a good interest rate, your money is actually losing purchasing power. But not only that, here's something else I don't do. I don't mess around with individual stocks. You've heard the phrase, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yep. We live here in Houston. I don't know where you're watching from, but we're from Houston. There was a famous company called Enron. Enron was a hot stock a couple of decades ago, but it was here in Houston, and all the employees had their retirement plan in Enron, and many companies were recommending Enron, only to have Enron become the biggest bankruptcies in the United States. Millions of dollars, were lost because people had all their eggs in one basket. The Bible itself in the book of Ecclesiastes tells us to divide our spoils between 7 and 8. And this is why I like mutual funds. What is a mutual fund? You may be asking. A mutual fund is a collection of everybody's money. I put in money, so you put in money, other people put in money, and we mutually buy stocks in a fund. So imagine you buying groceries. The mutual fund is the bag, right, where you put all your groceries in there. And so you buy them collectively. And the reason why I like mutual funds is because a mutual fund has anywhere between 40 to 250 companies in there, the biggest and the brightest. And not one company can be more than 8% of the fund. So think about it, if you had 100 companies in a mutual fund and Enron was 8% of it. And if Enron went belly up, your other 92% of the companies can still make you money, and it would absorb the bankruptcy of Enron. That's dividing. That's diversification. So I only recommend 4 types of mutual funds: a small growth mutual fund, a medium growth or growth and income mutual fund, a large growth, and foreign growth. I don't do bond funds. I don't do municipal bond funds. I don't do any of that. Growth stock mutual funds. I have 4, and I put 25% of my income in small growth, 25% in growth and income, 25% in large, and 25% in foreign. And by doing it that way, I have diversified within categories, and the funds themselves are diversified. And like I said, the last 5 years, I've been averaging 15% on my mutual fund, and that includes the down year of 2018. Last year, my mutual funds all of them did over 30%, and I have examples of that on my website. And so tonight, I just shared a quick overview of mutual funds. We can talk about it, and maybe one-on-one if you schedule a call, or when they invite me back to do another video. But so that's baby step 4, investing 15% of your income into growth stock mutual funds. Why not more? Well, you got to live a life, right? You don't want to be a hermit, not enjoy your life. But if you do less, then you may not reach your retirement goals. So 15% of your income towards retirement. Then baby step 5, if you have kids to college, I would recommend an educational savings account in a growth stock mutual fund, or a 529 plan that you can choose your own funds. Don't let it be bad funds like municipal funds, or let them dictate to you. Then baby step 6 is pay off the house early. And I don't want to get too much into it, but this is what I recommend. No more than 25% of your gross income towards your mortgage payment. If you have more than that, you have too much house where you're going to be house poor, what I call house poor, where all of your money is going to just maintain the house. We want you to enjoy your life. Have a 20% down payment. Like that, you avoid private mortgage insurance, which is called PMI. It's an insurance against default that the bank still gets paid should you default. And it could be anywhere from $50 to $200 a month. You want to save that. So with a 20% down payment, you can avoid PMI. And no more than a 15-year fixed interest rate mortgage. If you have a mortgage for 30 years, you're going to pay about 3 times the value of the house. So if you have $200,000 house, you'll end up paying close to $600,000 at the end. So $400,000 of interest. But the beauty of that is this. If you pay off your house in 15 years, not only do you save yourself 15 years of mortgage payments, you save yourself 15 years of interest, which is close to $400,000. And I have an example of this. So look at this example. You have a $300,000 mortgage. You have it for 30 years. You're paying about $1,500 mortgage payment. By the end, you see the amount there that you're going to pay total. And you're paying this for 15 more years, or 30 years in total. But look, if you had a 15-year mortgage, You're paying about $2,000, $500 more, but you're done in 15 years. You've saved yourself 15 years, and look at the interest rate you paid. You only paid about 90 compared to 400,000 in the other example. But here's the beauty. Let's say, oh, no, I want to pay 30 years. Well, do it my way. Pay 15, and then take your mortgage payment that you wanted to pay for another 15 years and put it in a mutual fund at 12%, right? It'd be about $26,000 a year that you're paying. Look how much money you would have. You'd have over $1 million. So you're costing yourself not only $400,000 in interest payment, but what I call opportunity costs. Because if you're paying $400,000 in interest, you can't use that money to invest. But if you pay it off in 15 years and then continue to pay your mortgage payment, but to a mutual fund, in those same 15 years, you'd have over $1 million. So it's not just the $400,000 you're costing yourself. You're costing yourself the opportunity to have $1 million and to be debt-free with, your house included 15 years earlier. That's what it takes to win. That's what it takes to leave a legacy. Get a 15-year mortgage. And if you decide a 15-year mortgage and you save money, you'd have close to $800,000. So you're costing yourself not just the interest, but the opportunity to invest it and leave a legacy. So I just want to end here, right, with this example, my personal example. My wife and I are on pace to retire with about $5 million. By God's glory and honor, that's the pace we're on. If the mutual funds continue the way they're going, we might retire with 7 or 8 million. But let's use the 5 million we're projected to have. At the end, when I begin to take money out of those 5 million, I'm going to take 200,000 out the first year. But I'm going to live on 70,000. But why do I take 200,000 out? Because let's say the market dips the next 2 years. I want to let that money recover. So for 2 years, I don't have to touch the money in the market. And if it continues to grow the way we project, the way the historical market has gone, then by the time I'm 90, that $5 million would be $54 million. Do you think I could build a couple of schools with that? Do you think I can change my family tree with that type of money? My grandmother died at 93, and my other grandmother's 101 years old. So I have a good chance of living till 90. So here is a poor kid whose mother was on welfare, who finally learned by God's providence how to manage money his way. And now I'm on pace to leave a legacy of about $54 million if I live to 90. My children will inherit some of that. I'm not going to give them all. But I am teaching them now the financial principles. My 4-year-old is learning the financial principles tailored to her age. But when she becomes a young adult, she will know how to manage that money and not let that money manage her. We can change our family tree, but it has to begin with a man in the mirror. It has to begin with a woman in the mirror. It has to begin with you. No one is going to do it unless you do it. And so I leave you with this message. Get the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Get the book Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray. Visit my website, giomarin.com. Schedule a free consultation, and we can change your family tree for God's glory and honor. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure sharing, and may God bless you on your financial journey.
Thank you for watching our program today. What part benefited you the most? Comment below and let us know. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. If you happen to be in the Houston area and you're looking to join the conversation in person, check us out on the web at houstoncentralsda.org. See you next time.